Hello, everyone. I am Jennifer Braverman.
And I'm Ellen Selm.
Welcome to our podcast, Stories from the Earth,
where we explore mankind's relationship and connection with the natural world.
We'd like to take a quick moment to invite our listeners to consider supporting us through a humble little donation. If you go to our Anchor page and click the support button, there are options to donate at $1, $5, or $10 a month. The donations will go towards helping us with future projects such as launching an herbal education curriculum we've dubbed the People's Herb School, a program designed with affordability and accessibility in mind, as well as funding to help us eventually take this show on the road and do some on-site reviews and interviews at herb farms and schools and other interesting places relevant to our show's theme.
Today, we are welcoming some Western North Carolina folk. It was brought to our attention by a past interview guest, an herbalist, Deanna Rose. And we'll be speaking with members of a group that she has joined titled All of Our Relations. And as a correction from our last episode's outro, I will mention that we do still have an amazing interview to share coming up with Linda and Luke Black Elk, but that will actually be saved for our next air date after this one, which should be November 10th.
Today we'll be chatting with 2 of the 6 members of the group from All Our Relations. So we have Suzannah Tebbe Davis and DeBorah Ogiste. And Susanna is a shamanic energy medicine woman. She offers over 2 decades of experience with a diverse blend of mind, body, spirit, wisdom teachings and Western theoretical practices. And DeBorah is an ordained New Thought Minister, metaphysician, spiritual teacher, life coach, a ceremonialist, a certified Reiki Master, and more.
Awesome. Well, we gave a brief intro here for each of you, but it hardly does y'all justice. Can you take a moment to share a bit more about yourselves individually in terms of why and how you came to be doing the things that you're doing and what led you on this path towards forming this group?
Who wants to go first? You, DeBorah?
I can.
Okay.
As she said, my name is DeBorah Ogiste. My pen name is DeBorah Satyagraha, which means reliance on truth. I came into this type of work because I've spent the majority of my adult life finding out who I am and going within me to clear some of the conditioning that has happened while I lived during this lifetime. And as a result of that, I have changed and seen things from a broader picture. I'm also a carrier of the sacred pipe, which is used for prayer and healing. And I am I use sound healing and tuning forks to create spiritual, emotional, and physical transformation. And as a high intuitive, I also do work where I work in the chakras of people. So I end up seeing a lot of things that people have gone through during their developmental stages of life. My main focus is integrating and bringing together people of all faiths, all races, and all ethnicity to understand that love is the highest vibration in the universe. And therefore, if we take the time to remove ourselves from the pain that has been created during this lifetime, we can see that there's only love and see where each of us stand. So that's what's gotten me into this type of work, because I believe that we can heal the earth by healing one person at a time.
Sort of that ripple effect outwards, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. All you need is love.
I'm Suzannah Tebbe Davis, and my story goes back to growing up by the ocean, and the ocean was my first spiritual teacher. I was one of those kids that you had to pull out of the water when their teeth were blue and their lips and teeth were chattering, and I always wanted to be in the water, in the ocean. And I always say that the ocean was my first teacher and first exposure to the divine feminine and the Great Mother. When I was 26, I left my then home in New Hampshire and I went on a 4.5-month trek across the country, camping with a friend and not knowing where I was going to end up. And during that time, I had a pretty strong yoga practice and meditation practice. And I was carrying a book with me that was World Meditations. And there was a particular meditation that really drew me that was a Japanese healing meditation. When I was 30 and I was back living on the East Coast and had gotten married that September, 6 months later, my mother and father were in a pretty devastating car accident. And my mother was in a coma for 12 weeks. And I would go to her bedside and I would use that Japanese healing meditation on her every day. And it was astonishing to me, the psychospiritual experiences that I had. I could actually literally see her body healing, and had times where I was finding myself out of body and in this other realm. And it was at that age that I recognized that healing goes so far beyond the physical, that medicine is so far beyond Western medicine. And from there, I really started delving into, I'd had an undergraduate degree in psychology and was doing my master's work with social work, and really found that what was calling me was the healing arts and sciences. So I began to embark on a number of studies. I started, like a lot of people did, with healing touch and Reiki, and then I went to a 3-year program on the Healing Center for Arts and Sciences, which was based on the work of Barbara Brennan, and did a certification of 3 years with the Four Winds Society on Peruvian shamanism, and had 3 major teachers, one of whom was Anadea Judith, who's a internationally known teacher who combines the Hindu chakra system with developmental theory and somatic work and body typology of Wilhelm Reich. Robert Moss, who was an internationally known dream and journey teacher. Sharon Blackie, who works with Celtic shamanism and Celtic mythology, and a number of Inca-based teachers in Peru. My current teacher is Tupac Tito Kuntur. He is what is known as an Alto Masayoc, and he lives in the Sacred Valley above 15,000 feet. And the Alto Masayocs are initiated into their medicine. They literally are called by lightning, and they are struck 3 times by lightning.
Oh my gosh.
And so lightning becomes their teacher. And so my own medicine and practice weave those roots together and are very much nature-based. And it is in working with both the fact that everything is alive and sentient, that everything has intelligence, not only the two-legged, that by working in the dream and journeying realms, we really can source so much additional knowledge, and that working with the chakras and the body and the somatics of the body, the mind-body connection, which is really, really real, and know that the body never, ever, ever lies to us. The body is always speaking its truth. That is the interweaving of my medicine and my practice. Your Awakened Life, I work specifically with men and women who are feeling the recognition and the call to realize their true purpose in life. Why are they here? And how can we heal each other and move back into the heart of the earth, the heart of the cosmos, and be those beautiful, healed, embodied spiritual beings that we were meant to be.
What is the focus and mission of your group, All of Our Relations?
I'll start with the inception of All Our Relations,
Okay.
which number of, I think it's 3, 4 years, 5 maybe years ago, I went to Standing Rock. I really lived my life by spirit call, and spirit had called me and said, you have to go to Standing Rock. And it was December, and I didn't want to go to Standing Rock in December. And I always listened to spirit. And so I found myself at Earth Fair the next week in a grocery line. And at the time I was really active with the Astral Movement Collective. And there was a woman, I don't know if you know this story, DeBorah, there was a woman there that I had danced with a number of times, but we, like many people at the Movement Collective, we had never had a conversation. And that woman was Leslie Temme, who was one of our members. And she was standing in front of me in the line. And I said to her, Leslie, have you had any call to go to Standing Rock? And she said, yes. As a matter of fact, I have. I said, do you have a van or an SUV? And she said, my grandmother gifted me one last week. And so the next week, we were on the road to Standing Rock. We had piled the car up with donations. And at the time, Tyler Garrison, who owned the Regeneration station, was very actively procuring donations for Standing Rock, loaded up a bunch of stuff and went to Standing Rock. And that experience for me was a death initiation for me. We were in Standing Rock in a blizzard. We learned how powerful energy transfer partners was and how insidious they were in terms of the devastation that they were doing through fracking with the earth, and how the press was in such collusion with what was going on. And I came back from that experience and said to my husband, we don't live in a democracy and we don't have free press. And through that, I was called to have lunch with Tyler, who was doing so much activism work, and say, Tyler, I know you're doing Community Roots, which he had just formed with Kat Houghton, and I really would like to explore doing activism with spirituality. Would you be open to having a spiritual arm of Community Roots? And he said yes. So started working with that group and met Sharon, brought Sharon Oxendine in, and we began opening to doing sacred activism work. We put retreat at Warren Wilson, I think it was in 2017 or 18, and then started really thinking about all our relations and who would spirit call in to be that collaborative, which ended up being these 7 amazing women. Sheila Pride being one of them. She's in St. Louis and has kind of bowed out for now because of the distance and the pandemic. DeBorah, Kim Hughes, Leslie, Deanna, and myself. Did I get everyone?
You missed Sharon.
And Sharon Oxendine. And so that we started gathering together and doing ceremony together and crafted a mission and spent, gosh, how long has it been, DeBorah? Has it been over a year that we've been doing our foundational work?
Yeah, it's been almost 2 years.
Yeah, and so I have our mission up. Our mission is to create unification through unconditional love, sacred witnessing, and spiritual regeneration in order to uplift this collective consciousness. We aim to create safe space while offering earth-honoring ceremonies, co-creating and connecting communities of sacred activists, and educating about healing, wholeness, and spiritual and ecological discernment so that we can collectively awaken and remember we are all related and here to serve one another and the earth. And
it's so wonderful how much can fall under that umbrella in terms of things that you can do with it too. That's really amazing.
Yeah.
You know,
And it's so crazy to me that you're like, oh, Standing Rock, when I was there like 4 or 5 years ago, I'm like, oh, I can't even believe it's been that long. Like, wow, feels like yesterday in some ways.
Yeah.
I mean, we collected. Ellen got a box from Gaia to donate. I think we
were both working at Whole Foods at the time, so I solicited almost every brand vendor that I could to see if anybody would donate medicines for us to ship up there. And I got a number of brands to send free product that I sent along the way with some other donations I'd gathered. So, yeah.
I'll say one other thing about that, and then I want to like turn it over to DeBorah, because there's so many. You could spend a whole session on Standing Rock. When we went to Standing Rock, one of the amazing intersections that had happened, because it's so much a mythic journey, was that it was the time when all of the troops self-deployed in the country and descended on Standing Rock, and I got to talk to a number of them. And they were coming in with Greenpeace as well. And they said in all the time that they had been in service, in the service, in deployment or acting through the military, they had never felt that they were serving with honor, and that this was the first time at Standing Rock that they felt they were actually in service to the country.
Wow.
I originally, and I don't even know if Susanna remembers this, I originally met Susanna, it must have been about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. We were both doing prayer vigil at Unity. And and I met her, and Spirit said, you will be working with her. And I just looked at her and I was like, why? Who is this person? And, I kind of let that go. I didn't think any more about it until I got a call from Sharon Oxendine, and she said, Susanna wants you to come into this group. And I had no idea what the group was about or anything, but I said, well, Spirit said I was going to do something with Susanna. And I just showed up, and we did ceremony, and we met a few times before it even became clear what we were doing. And, within the ceremony, we each started seeing things, and we each started coming out of our physical existence into a spiritual realm to realize and understand that we were connected to make positive changes on this earth. And we all come from such different backgrounds that it's kind of like a ethereal explosion when we're together. And I just see nothing but greatness coming out of this group. And when I look forward, I see not a nationwide experience going on, but a worldwide experience going on.
Yeah.
And all our relations as a way to just bring people together from all walks of life. And it's really prevalent right now, especially in our country, when things have become so clear about the division that has been hidden for so long, but has always been here. So as we do sacred activism for me is understanding the truth of what is really happening and speaking in truth, not soft soaping it. Because, being here in the South, you learn that, honey, you're so sweet, meaning that you are a ridiculous person. And, and these type of things, which is culturally being polite.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to stop being polite and just be true.
Mm-hmm.
And that truth has to start with being truthful to yourself before you can be truthful to other people. And so I think that That's part of it. And part of the truth is that we are totally and completely connected to the earth. And being a city girl, that's a hard pill to swallow, that there's dirt out there that I'm supposed to get in. You know?
Yeah, uh-huh.
The dirt is calling.
The dirt is calling, yeah, I hug a tree, and when I hug a tree, I feel that energy coming within me, that's coming from our connection, because God is in all things. So, yeah, this is a beautiful collaboration. And I think we are all just learning from each other, which is making it even more amazing, because it's our path, it's our journey, it's our purpose.
So your entire group wasn't able to join us today for the talk. I don't know how comfortable you feel speaking, not for them, but about them anyway. Can you tell us a little bit about who's missing and introduce them for the listeners, so we get a complete picture of all the expertise involved in your project?
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Sharon. Do you want to start?
Well, Sharon Oxendine is a Lumbee elder.
Okay.
And she is a fabulous ceremonialist. She has dedicated her life to bringing her culture into a healing space for everyone to be able to partake. And that is her dedication. You can go on from there, Susanna.
Sharon is one of the most ethical and humble people, in the Incan tradition and the way we work with nature. We always work with humility and respect, and that's how Sharon Oxendine works. When she was the director of Western Carolina Businesswomen's Center, when she put on events, she had more women of color, more diversity than any other organization in Asheville. And I would speculate in North Carolina, because she's so passionate about inclusion and working with BIPOC, as DeBorah is. She's a sacred pipe carrier. She has land in Fairview that is dedicated to ceremony, and she is a really strong, she's done study with Malidoma Some from West Africa as well. So she blends her First Nation, her Lumbee practices with West African medicine. Does amazing divination, and really comes to ceremony from a very organic place. Did I miss anything, do you think?
I think you covered it all.
Okay.
And it's interesting because the street where she has the property is, and she did not name this.
Really?
No, she didn't. When she purchased it, it was already Medicine Wheel Way.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll talk about Kim Hughes because I've known Kim since probably 1998. I met Kim at a retreat at Kripalu Yoga Center that I was assisting my teacher. And Kim was there with her husband. And we kind of locked eyes and fell in love. And we've been sisters ever since. I was so delighted. She was living in Brooklyn at the time. And Kim is both a somatic therapist. She was a professional opera singer. She's a sound healer, and she is a Mary Magdalene devotee. She's done a lot of work in developing pods, sacred tribes. Right now, the reason she's not with us right now is she's in her second week of Sacred Mirrors, which is working with a set group of women as being mirrors for each other's truths. That's running through the end of December, I think, and then she'll be back with us. Kim is also a beautiful ceremonialist. She has a voice that'll shatter glass, so she channels in a lot of song, and she is incredible with crystal bowls and really values the goddess movement. And her totem is the white horse. Yeah. And that's been with her a long time.
What I know of Kim, and I don't know her even an inkling of as well as Susanna does. When I look at, she's an open light, and everything she does, she leads with her heart, and her mind will follow. And that's the main thing I can say about her. You know that she's heart centered.
I see how the white horse is very apropos to that description.
Yeah.
And Deanna, well, I think we all know Deanna. She brings her special brand of sound into everything she does. And her whole way of connecting with the environment, of connecting with the plants and the animals, is like she becomes them. She becomes the flowers. She becomes the plants. She becomes the sound. It's like her spirit is so fluid that it becomes part of whatever she's doing. And she brings that to our group. And she allows that energy of connectedness to lead her first. And I find that extraordinary because it puts her in a place of being trustworthy.
Yeah, Deanna, I think of Deanna really as a songbird. She has such a beautiful song, and her words, she's very melodic. You know how melodic her voice is. And so I don't know that I've ever even heard her speak that it didn't sound like a song. She's so harmonious, right?
Yeah.
And she's living on the land that Sharon owns, and you can see what a beautiful steward of the earth she is because of how that land is transforming with the work she puts in on it, with the herbs and the flowers that she's planting, and how she really tends to all of the nature spirits there. So I see her as someone who's very graceful, who's very ethereal, and has really beautiful integrity. She's pretty selfless and committed. You know, she's the baby of the group. So she's always right there, willing to pitch in whatever way is wanted. And she's a brilliant marketer, I'll say that. And has a lot of gifts when it comes to sound. And I think that's so important because when we talk about the divisions in our country and the polarity, how corrupted and disharmonious sound has become in our language and in our culture. And so she heals on a lot of levels like that. And then we have Leslie.
I was wondering, I mean, since I know Deanna, I was wondering if I could add something.
Please.
When I'm with her, I feel like I don't have to be anything but myself. A lot of people might have had this experience, and high school was kind of hard and all this stuff, and you get teased and things like that. So I still have a lot of that junk around, but with her, I just get right past that, and just I can see myself reflected back in her. I just wanted to say that because she's just so great.
She's very peaceful energy.
Yeah.
I actually look forward to being in her presence.
Yeah.
It's like, oh gosh.
Yeah, I do too.
And you had one more, right? Leslie, was it?
Yeah, Leslie is both a yogini, so she's a yoga teacher, and she is a professor, and I'm not going to get the name of the university. Is it Eastern Tennessee University?
I'm not sure.
I think it's ETSU, which she teaches it locally. Well, now she teaches it on Zoom. So she teaches master's level social work students. And one of the passions for her with all our relations, and that she wants to see grow, is that she will be able to have a platform where she can teach social work principles that are interwoven with nature and with interconnectedness with nature and spirit, which is not there right now in our educational system. And because of that, there's so much burnout with these young social workers, with social workers, and with how they approach their clients and the community. She's very bright, and she's both spiritual and logical, and she's very systems oriented. And because she does so much work with curriculum, she's really good at designing curriculum and in setting up organizational structure. So she has that kind of really architectural mind. She can construct and design things, and they'll have a solid foundation. She's very, very passionate. Her land is very beautiful and very well cared for. She's very passionate about nature, and she's very passionate about the earth. And she also is studying and has studied the Peruvian path. And so she also uses a number of the Andean practices that I've studied and teach.
Yeah. It's a small world. You meet each other and you're like, oh, we studied the same thing.
That's right. That's right. It's pretty amazing. And now we end up here. Yeah. So we're all woven together. And what I would say about the group, that there's so many things I could say about each of these women that I love and respect so much. They're all incredibly diverse, bright women, and they have never powerful, and they have never let their power corrupt them, and they have never tried to have power over. They have always been so full of light and integrity, and really their love for the Pachamama, for each other, for all of Pachamama's children, it never wavers. Their dedication, when you heard DeBorah talking about our global initiative, and I share that, she's like, man, she's like such a powerhouse. She's so full of fire and spirit at the same time as that she's refined that into such light. And I love her, and I love every one of the women in this collective. You know, of course, I don't think it's any coincidence that we're all women. That's what Spirit called in. And so, you know, we operate by consent, not consensus but consent, that we each consent. And right now, one of the things we've consented to is that while we are forming and this first offering of Sacred Emergence comes in, we've had a number of people ask if they could come in and be in the organization, and we're going to hold it as it is while we're forming, because this is a springboard for us. And then as we get established and as we begin broadening our offerings, then we can look down the line at broadening our membership.
I can't wait to see how this all grows and stuff. I just can't wait.
Neither can we.
We'll have to have you guys on again for the next phase. So just diving a little bit deeper into your mission statement, I was just wondering if you can explain a little bit about some of the terms and ideas for some people who are a little less familiar with some of this. And so just, can you explain more about what is sacred witnessing and spiritual regeneration?
Take sacred witnessing first. There's this term called Pacha. It's a Quechua term, which is Incan, and it means sacred space. And so we all are stewards of a Pacha, a sacred space we live on. And we all are a Pacha, so we all are sacred. And so when we recognize that and we practice it, we begin to drop the delusion of the mainstream thinking, which is polarizing and divisive. And we remember that we all are the beloved children of the Pachamama, the mother, the cosmic mother of all space and time, that she loves all of us. And the kind of biblical story, if you will, that my teacher taught about the Pachamama of all space and time is, in the beginning, there was the Pachamama, and she was all of space and time, and she was divine love, and she had such expansive love that she longed to share it. So she created everything. She created everything. And in everything she created, she planted a sacred seed that was part of the sacred seed of her heart. And that we can activate that seed in our heart on the sacred altar of our heart and remember that we all are sacred. So when we come from that perspective, we remember that everything is sacred. Everything is sacred. Nothing is profane. Everything is sacred. So sacred witnessing is that remembering. And when we are doing our individual work, and I know you do this, DeBorah, we come from this place of the heart and this place of love, which is the highest truth and the highest vibration. And we witness from the eyes of our heart. So that's what sacred witnessing is.
Susanna, what you just said, I love that. It made me think of a favorite line from a favorite book of mine that was written by a Zen monk. But he had a line in there that's always stuck with me that says, "Praise is how you are in the world." Yeah, that's what that made me think of.
And you know, whenever I hear that story of the creation from Pachamama, my heart always just wells up. It's like I can feel that seed within me recognizing the truth. You know, it feels like this, like it's vibrating. And so, like, as Susanna was telling the story, I was in that space of vibration. You know, because it just rings so true within my soul and my spirit. And wow. All right, go on with spiritual regeneration. I love the way
that was so beautiful. Thank you. I can feel it in my heart. I feel your heart and I feel all our hearts. Thank you. So to me, spiritual regeneration is, you know, we have so many myths globally, and we have a myth in this country that is built on colonial perspective and colonial foundation. And it is built on a hierarchy of power from the wounded masculine that has oppressed and annihilated the goddess and the divine feminine. And in this place of spiritual regeneration, we are waking up to the reality that this old model is built on extraction from the earth, not love of the earth, of extracting from the earth. And we can see it till the earth is completely decimated. And we can see that in how women have been treated and how women have been abused and women have been diminished, and men, and how anyone who is not white is less than, and that's a myth, and it's a very destructive myth. So with spiritual regeneration, we come back to that we are embodied spirits, that we belong to the Pachamama, and that we are her children, and that we are here for a spiritual purpose that's based on our bodies and the earth and on our love of and devotion to nature. So we can regenerate.
It's taking all these concepts that are interrelated, even when people in the smaller circles don't necessarily, they may or may not think about how it's interrelated. You know, you just talk about regenerative agriculture, sustainable building. I mean, you know, like the sustenance, the substance of life, right? Your housing and your community is the spiritual regeneration. Because if you get that in line, well, certainly all those other things I would think would come a lot more naturally and easily.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And our work is also going to be with environmental activists, and we've got these divisive models set up in environmental activism also, because it's not productive to pit people against each other. And even with many environmental activism, there is a passion about what's happening to the planet, but there seems to me often not to be a consciousness around the sentience of everything in nature. And so that diminishes the power hierarchy. It makes it a hierarchy where really nature is the mother and we are her children. So we have a lot of work to do.
And you have to think about, see, I work a lot with Mayan tradition. And I remember the whole time when the Mayan calendar was coming to an end and there was all of this excitement and everything. And I would hold classes about the end of the Mayan calendar, to try and get people to understand that for me and for my teaching, what that meant was the masculine way of existing was coming to an end, and the feminine way of being and nurturing was going to start to grow. And that's what I've seen. And through the centuries of the masculine way of being, our spiritual being has been lessened and lessened and lessened. And now it's time, through this time of nurturing and building and holding, to become regenerated, to become fed. Because we've seen the destruction of the earth due to the masculine way of being. And now it's time to bring all of that imbalance, the masculine energy, the feminine energy, into balance, so that we can now regenerate all things. And like you said, it starts within. And I think that's my piece that I bring, is that go within and let's clean it out. Let's clean that stuff out of there so that we can now show up.
That's really cool to hear that side of it, DeBorah, because I had heard and read, murmurings of the whole 2012 calendar end, yada yada, and I didn't necessarily think it was going to be some sort of like sudden apocalypse, but it was curious, and but I never heard anyone talk about, like, anybody who'd bothered to study it to any depth to actually be able to go, well, actually, it's sort of just like, more or less, it sounds like a page is turning, right? Like we're on to the next chapter, the wheel's turning around, and it's a new stage, not an end, but just, well, I guess an end in some sense, but where there's one end, you've got a new beginning.
Another beginning.
So, yeah. Well, you talked a little bit about what you envision this group becoming on like a global scale. I'm just curious, how do you see this group growing? Like how might it reach from Western North Carolina and the couple pockets of people you've connected with across state lines to going in that direction? Like, have you entertained thoughts about what this might start looking like when it gets to the point that people are joining you and so forth?
Well, one thing happened from that. I received a Facebook Messenger from someone in Atlanta today, and she was like, please keep me on the list. I can't make this one, but I really am interested in something like this, blah, blah, blah. And we started communicating, and she wants to now see that she can get enough people interested so that we can do one in Atlanta.
Oh, nice.
Awesome.
So I'm seeing that as a way to, to grow. I'm just waiting for the day that someone in London says, can y'all come over here and do this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Someone in West Africa, Ghana, says, can you come over here and do this?
Yeah.
And to be able to go to these places, and as a result of that, connect the people. Connect the people of like mind from London to the people of like mind in Ghana. You know, to be able to connect these people of like mind together to say, okay, we are shifting the energy of the very existence on this planet. I mean, that's what I see.
You'll go around the world, you'll plant these little seeds, and then when you leave, they'll have their own garden that they can just go grow with from there, right?
Yeah.
You know, our model, our leadership model is based on a lot of feminine principles, and one of them is collaboration. So as we grow, because we had a lot of thought about, should our first offering be in person or should it be a summit? And we decided on an in-person event, which is coming up on November 13th, to really have people be able to feel and touch who we are and to present our medicine and our teachings locally. That is a first event. We will do a summit that will be online, and that will, because we'll start to build an audience, and we'll do an online summit which will reach a much broader audience, and we'll continue expanding from there. And what our vision is that this first offering, so you'll get to see who we are as a collective, and then we also will have offerings that are one or two of us, that you can get to see which each member is, and that will keep the momentum up and will gather collaborators. We love the Pachamama Alliance. They're such a great model, and they're built on collaboration, and their whole thing is about, you know, protecting the Amazonian rainforests and raising money for that. And I have done work in teaching in England, and there's such a strong environmental movement there. And my husband and I have led tours to Scotland. And, you know, with the internet, it's so easy to reach an international audience. Yeah. So I don't see that as a stretch at all. Mm-hmm. And we, because we all are so different, we also all have overlapping and distinct audiences, which gives us a broader reach.
Right now, I have a program that comes on once a month. It's called BIPOC Raw. And basically, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous People of Color. And it's a conversation of people that are from that diaspora of being BIPOC, whether it's Asian, Spanish-speaking, Muslim, Indian, Native American. These are the disenfranchised people in America. So it gives them a platform to speak about exactly what's really going on from their perspective. The majority of my audience is white women. We have people from Europe that are up in the middle of the night to be on the show. And so that shows that how wide things are now that we're online. You know, there are a lot of people say, oh, I'm sick of Zoom. Oh, no, I embrace it. Because it has brought a global community together. So it is just a matter of time before all our relations is a global community.
The name of the group says it all. It's just inviting it right in.
Yeah.
So you have an event coming up in November, which you've been sort of chatting about throughout. What is the name of the event and what is it about? And can you give a bit of a sneak preview of what folks can expect to experience from attending? And then how can our listeners find out more about the event in case they wish to attend? And I am going to post links and all the information as well.
DeBorah, take it away.
Okay. Well, the title is Sacred Emergence, a journey towards connectedness authentic connections. And with what we have been experienced over the past couple of years, a lot of times we have lost connection, and we have lost connection with each other. And this is a starting point to really come into contact with your own authenticity so that you can reach out into the world and make authentic connections, to feel more connected with the earth, with each other, with yourself. Because one of the things we never think about with us being in this type of isolation is people have begun to isolate from their own emotions and feelings out of fear. So through our work that we will be doing, we are going to help lead people out of that fear into an authentic connection with themselves. And we're going to use several different modalities and ceremonies to allow this to happen. I play the Tibetan bowls. And as I said earlier, I work within your chakras and allow you to release blocked memories that may be there. So there will be some journeying, and there will be a lot of ceremony. And I'll let Susanna go more in depth in some of the other things we'll be offering.
You know, DeBorah talked about fear, and I love the acronym I learned about fear decades ago, which is false events appearing real. And man, if there ever was a time that that's true, it's now. And so there is such collective fear and terror right now with the pandemic, with the events of the world, with the isolation, with this lack of groundedness. And in my practice, I think the beauty of it is that it's allowing kind of that internal corruption or corrosion, which is shame, because we're such a shame-based culture, because we've lost our way with nature, because we've forgotten nature, that we're presented with this momentous opportunity to wake up again. I know that ceremony, when we talked about sacred witnessing, this is an opportunity for sacred witnessing. It's an opportunity to wake up from this captivity that tells us that we are less than and that we are a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
That we are a mistake. I can't remember which one of you guys, or it was Tebby, someone was reading something, and it was about the First Nation people and how when the white Christians came to this country and decimated the First Nation people, they actually said to them, God said you're a mistake. God said that you are a mistake. And that underbelly lives. You know, it's fermenting, and it might not be consciously expressed, but it lives, and it takes the form of shame in many people. And when you talk about, we really want to reach diverse audiences, and we want this experience to be for diverse populations so that we can all be sacred witnesses to each other, and that through ceremony. My ceremonies, mostly Andean practices, many nature practices, and ritual and transmission of rites, RITES, coupled with journeying, collective dreaming, and breath work and sound healing. We create this experience in a day of something that's harmonious. And when you take that back, when you transform like that and you make connections, which I believe people will, you take that out in the world and you're vibrating in a different way. And that doesn't stop when you leave, because something's been ignited. And so through the different lenses and skills and medicine that everyone brings, including anyone, I strongly believe that anyone who's called to anything, it's not a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. So whoever shows up to this event, and this event will sell out. I haven't participated in an event in maybe 5 years that hasn't sold out pretty immediately. So I know that it'll sell out because it's really important message. So people will come away and they'll be jazzed and they'll be shifted. And I think all of our vision is that people will be more open and loving towards each other and will more trusting of each other and supported. So that's what you can expect from this day of ceremony, from the sacred emergence, that you can come out of the cave and you can emerge and look around and really be bright and shiny.
Yeah.
So this is it'll be like an all-day event?
Yes.
And say that the date again was November...
It's November 13th.
Awesome.
I think it's 10 to 5.
10 to 5, yeah.
Yeah.
So you were talking about ceremony, and I wanted to take a minute to dig into that word a little bit, because it sounds like, I mean, it's something you all incorporate in your organization. It's something you incorporate into your own daily lives and practice. And it certainly seems like it's something that you're trying to teach other people to embrace more. So how would you define ceremony, especially in terms of why it is something important for people to consider incorporating as a way of being on this planet?
Well, you know, one of the things that you think about ceremony, you think about how it is presented out into the world. Like, for example, I was looking at the Webster dictionary, and it was saying that a ceremony is a series of acts performed according to a tradition, or it's like a ritual observance and procedures performed at a grand formal occasion. But when I think of ceremony, it's a way of living. It's a way of being. It's a way of allowing each step to be special, to be part of your spiritual being. Even cooking is more than just preparing a meal. You're praying that this meal brings health and joy to your family. So that's a ceremonial act, because you're doing it with reverence. So when you talk about bringing ceremony into your life and allowing people to understand that definition of ceremony.
That's gorgeous. I love that. Ceremony is sacred, and it doesn't start the day that you register, the day you're coming to the event. So we're all praying and making offerings about this event. We will go and introduce ourselves to the land at Hawk Creek Commons before the event and make offerings and ask permission, because respect means that you recognize that there are spirits of every pacha, of every sacred space. And if you don't ask for permission to enter and introduce yourself, you won't come fully in. And so ceremony involves asking for permission and respecting and promising to hold the space that you're going to be stewarding for however long, with humility. From that place, there's a particular flavor. It would be called the Kausai Pacha, which is the cosmology of living energy. And there's this phrase that's tasting the Kausai, which is tasting the flavor of everything that you're working with. So when you're doing a ceremony, you have a particular flavor to the ceremony. So there's always in ceremony, at least from my perspective, you get permission and you give offerings. You call in sacred space and bring in the ancestors and the helpers in whatever tradition you're trained in, and with prayer, which, as DeBorah was saying, I mean, prayer is really, really, it's imperative in good ceremony, and because spirit won't come in without it. And so you do prayer, and then you have a container. And then organically, because you're not working from your body alone, you've got all this company with the trees and the birds and, the nature beings. You are collaborating, which is, again, a feminine principle. You're collaborating to create ceremony. And that's where sacred witnessing also comes in, because you're recognizing, okay, the wind has just shifted directions and is blowing really fiercely. What's the message here? A hawk flew overhead. What direction was it flying? Was it crying? Was it silent? Was it meeting something? Nothing is coincidental and without meaning. And that's ceremony, right? And then so even when you're doing specific things like journeying or meditation or pipe ceremony, you're always doing that in the context of collaboration and of reverence for your ancestors and spirits.
You're both very eloquent, and your eloquence has inspired me, if you would humor me, to share something with you that I wrote last year. I look at it as a poem. It's maybe a little bit more of sort of like a meditation, but there was a lot of going inward, I think, especially since the pandemic. And this was just sort of an epiphany I had and wrote down. And it sounds a lot like what you all were both just saying. I titled it Each and All. And it says, the meal does not prepare itself. It is a holy act to craft sustenance of the earth. The cloth does not weave itself. It is a blessed gift to entwine the strings that offer warmth and protection. The burden does not carry itself. It is a sacred duty to shape the clay and bind the rushes which help to lift the load. The path does not walk itself. Your way is prepared by the perpetual choices you make. That is the movement of living. Life does not live itself, but is consecrated through every breath and rendered true by your vision. And I have printed that out, and I'm going to frame it and hang it somewhere where it's always in front of my face. I felt like that was like some part of me going, tap, 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 just so you remember, this is what it's about, you know.
That's absolutely exquisite. I'm so honored that you would share that today. And in this interview,
I found a very appropriate
for sure,
receptacle.
Go back and say, when everyone's talking about ceremony and everything having a meaning, a lot of times I get this sense that, you know, also in my life and maybe talking to other people, that a lot of the things we do every day just feels like it doesn't have any meaning. And so incorporating this idea of ceremony, idea of having things mean something and be connected to things is I think something that is good and something that's needed in everyone's lives and this world that we live in. So it's something we forgot how to do. All right, so can you list some books that inspire your work personally in your own practice or with this group, books that you would recommend to anyone wanting to know more about the work that each of you do? So say if somebody wants to sort of interested in your field of study.
Well, with sacred activism, I have Andrew Harvey, The Hope, which is a guide to principles of sacred activism. And Joanna Macy and Chris Johnstone of Active Hope. So I think they're good books for people in terms of principles of activism that have a very spiritual base and are kind of global in their relationship. Got Sandra Ingerman, who I've not personally studied with, but read a lot of. This one is Medicine for the Earth, and its title is How to Transform Personal and Environmental Toxins. And Sandra is one of the, I'm an elder, so she's one of the elder group. There were a lot of what we call Jubus, who were Jewish Buddhists who went and studied in India in the 60s and 70s. And then there's also a group that has gone to Peru and Ecuador and Chile and have studied South American work, and Sandra is one of them, and she's an incredible shamanic practitioner in this country. So she does a lot of work. I really highly recommend any work she does. And then Robert Moss, who's one of my teachers, I've been studying his work for over 4 years, and he's an internationally renowned dream teacher. And when I first became introduced to dreaming and collective dreaming, I participated in a dream summit, and it was during that time that I learned that most of the most prolific dream teachers in the world had near-death experiences as children. So Robert is one of those. He's from Australia, and one of his it's a really brilliant little book. It's very simple, and he says that there are 3 things that we are taught that really keep us from our truth and minimize us. And this book is called The 3 Only Things. It's only a dream, it's only a coincidence, and it's only your imagination. And he devotes a chapter to each one of those concepts, so that, and he shows how royalty and oracles and different cultures have worked with those concepts in the past, so that we can reclaim it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think Anadea Judith, who was a major teacher for me, she has a book, it's about 10 years old right now, that's called Waking the Global Heart. And she took, have you heard of this book, DeBorah? Because you would love it if you haven't.
No, I haven't.
She took the chakra system and she mapped out a global perspective where each chakra, she correlated with an age of civilization, and then also put it in the developmental system, and she put it on an ascending path, the ascending path of the chakras. So Waking the Global Heart is about how to come into activism and spirituality through that chakra system. It's a great book.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, so those are some of my books.
Awesome. I'll put
Right
links. I'll put links to them as well, so everyone can look them up and check them out.
Great.
Being that our podcast is about ways in which humans connect and interrelate with nature, and that's clearly a central focus in what you all do, can you say some things that you personally do to kind of stay grounded in these crazy times?
Go ahead. You're first.
Oh, wow.
And did you have any books you want to recommend?
Oh, well, no. Well, there's one I want to recommend, and that is Disappearance of the Universe. And, oh, gosh, I don't know who it's by. It's somewhere I have millions of books. But it's Disappearance of the Universe, and it's basically about the time in between lives. And it's one of the best reincarnation experience books that I've ever read. And it really allows you to see how everything connects together. So that's out of all the books that I have listed, that's the one that I would recommend the most. Yeah.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Now, what was the question?
How do you stay grounded in these crazy times?
Whew. And I'm going to tell you, sometimes it's not easy. But I do work with the chakra system. And I do one of the things that I do, especially when I'm really out of whack, is I do a long meditation that goes through the chakras with the sounds and, for each chakra and all of that. I have a poster that I made, and I have a bracelet that someone made for me specifically for this meditation act. And I go through them all. I go through the sounds and the affirmations, and it takes time because it's like on a 7, 6, 8, 7, 6, 10, because number for completion, a number for opening up. But I do that when things get really rough. Other times I'll just run outside in my bare feet and make sure I'm touching the dirt, which is really, really important because you can just feel it. And I just allow it, the Mother Earth, to just come up through my body and bring it down. The Father Son to bring it down and just connect within me. And that helps a lot as well. But it's that deep breathing when I feel, because there's been a lot of anger with everything that's happened over the past couple of years. And how do you keep that anger from happening? How do you keep that generational anger from rearing its ugly head? And sometimes I don't do a good job. But other times I just have to breathe it in and say, and remember who I am, and ground myself that way, and know that I am in the company of such wonderful, wonderful women and people. And this might be a little off kilter, but one of the things that they say is that if you want to know how far you come or where you are in your spiritual evolution, look at the people that you have drawn into your life. When I first met Susanna and Spirit told me I was going to be working with her, my whole thing was I was intimidated and I could not understand what I could bring to the table to work with this woman. That was the whole thing. It's like, work with her. It wasn't like work with her, what's wrong with her? Work with her, how am I worthy? And now I look around and the women that I have in my life, oh man, I must be really badass.
You are badass. Yeah.
I mean, on that note, I'm feeling more affirmed just getting this chance to talk to y'all. So it's like, oh wow, how did this land in our lap? That's awesome.
I want to share a couple of my practices. They're all Peruvian. So I have an apacheta in front of my house. I'm really lucky and blessed that my private practice is in my home, so I don't have to go anywhere. And we have an herb garden out front and a food forest. And there's an apacheta that we've built, and an apacheta is like a stone cairn. There's a specific protocol for building it, and it creates a saiwa, which is an energetic column that goes between the three worlds in the Peruvian cosmology. That's the lower world, middle world, and upper world, and it has nothing to do with the Christian designation of heaven and hell and earth. Nothing. So nothing. So I go out to the apacheta every morning, and I have this practice of greeting the day that I teach everywhere I go from my teacher. And you would no more neglect to greet your relatives outside than you would think to ignore your partner or your four-leggeds or your children when you get up. You wouldn't walk out of the house and not acknowledge them. So the first thing I do is I go outside and I sit by the apacheta, and there's a protocol, and I greet the day. So I will first bring a flower to my heart, and there's a specific technique to use that flower to open to the Pachamama of all space and time, greet her, ask her to come into my heart, and then I will greet the day. So I will connect my grounding cord to the sun and say, good morning, Inti, which is Father Sun. I am Suzannah Tebbe Davis. With humility and respect, I greet you, I greet the day. And I really feel the response and the energy of the sun. And I go through all of the elementals, the wind, the trees, the flowers, the winged ones, the creepy crawlers, the two-leggeds, the four-leggeds, so that when I'm done, I've got the whole communities awake and communicating with each other. And then I'll offer flowers and prayers to the apacheta. And there are millions of apachetas all around the earth. So I'll connect it out and I'll connect it up and down. And I always put a prayer in for my sisters from all our relations. Every day I put in a prayer for them and for the work we're doing together. And if there's anyone who's suffering, I mean, who isn't suffering in some way, but for everyone in my circle who's got a particular suffering or that I love and want to see a dream come through in my clients, I'll blow in the energy of the prayer and then I'll give it to the apacheta in bare feet. And so that's how I stay grounded. And then with my clients, we'll often bring out the frame drums. I have a beloved, it's a frame drum, and she's incredible. And we drum opening sacred space drumming, and she's amazing and really grounding. So that's how I ground. And like DeBorah, and I do Olympias, and the Olympia is a practice to cleanse yourself of hucha, which is heavy disorganized energy. And the way I do it is I have a stone out by my apacheta. It's a dark stone, and I'll blow in like I'm feeling anxious. And then I'll start cleaning my body or my energy body. And then what's below that, I feel like, so it might be, I feel like I'm not worthy. And you clean. And so you're energetically showering your body, and it's incredibly grounding and gets you centered. Now, some days I'm more successful than others, and some days, you know, it feels like spinning my wheels. But that I think it's that practice and having that continuity that keeps you grounded, whatever it is for you.
Sometimes I'll sit and I'll play the Tibetan bowls, and that'll help. Yeah, I just play the bowls, and I have a rain stick that I will, and that sound just kind of allows me to get into more motion.
Do you have any final parting words of wisdom, food for thought, to leave with our listeners today?
You come into this world as a sacred child. You have a guiding star that you come from. And at that place of being with the star, you are encoded with all of the tools you need to manifest the gift that is uniquely yours, that you bring to this world, that you chose to incarnate in this body, in this time. Remember how unique you are. Remember how beloved you are. And remember how worthy you are.
Wow, that's wonderful. I don't think I can do anything more than that.
Remember.
Say ditto.
Exactly.
I'd like to thank everyone for listening, and I'd like to thank our fabulous guests for joining us today. It's been amazing. I want to remind everyone to check out the event that's going to be happening in November, and I'll put up all the details. And we're also going to put up links to all of your personal websites and everything. But real fast, where's the best place for our listeners to find each of you online?
Okay, mine is peacefulmiracles.com.
Okay.
Mine is www.yourawakenedlife.net, which is going to be going through a complete overhaul in the next couple of months. So it'll be up there, and that is not what it's going to be reflecting, what you see now.
Okay. And all right, so you can find us, our podcast, if you want to listen, on Anchor or Spotify. We are also on YouTube if you'd like to watch all of our smiling faces. We have a Facebook group and Instagram if you'd like to follow us there, keep up with all we are doing. And again, we'd like to invite our listeners to consider supporting us, going to our Anchor page, clicking the donate button, And the donations will go to helping us with future projects such as our herb school, the People's Herb School, and also helping take the show on the road and sort of expanding this podcast into new things, extra things, going deeper with our
Big,
guests.
broader territories.
Evolving, I guess.
Oh, and I was just going to say, join us for our next episode, where, as previously promised, we'll be sharing a great conversation we had with ethnobotanist, conservationist, and indigenous sovereignty activists Linda and Luke Black Elk. That'll be airing mid-November.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.